So, a few months ago or a few weeks ago, somebody made a statement in an interview I was watching. You probably know the person. I can't think of the name right now. But the person said, "Who made America the world's police?" And they asked in context, why are we the ones sponsoring and financing and controlling everything in the world when we have things to take care of in our house? Why I brought that up is Mike Lee is going to be stating, basically, should I say demanding, that US leaves or parts ways with the UN and WHO because they are the major contributors, but they don't seem to benefit from it. Now, listen to this one. It's going to be an interesting one. Pay attention, and then we'll discuss afterwards.
Mr. President.
The senior senator from Utah.
Mr. President, in the words of a Simon and Garfunkel song, they sing of a dream in which the world had all agreed to bring an end to war. And they reached this agreement apparently just by signing a single piece of paper. This dream is just a dream, of course. That's not how things are brought about. That's not how lasting peace occurs. But the dream echoes the stated aspirations that led to the creation and eventually the perpetuation of the United Nations. But as history unfolded, the stark reality has not lived up to those lofty aspirations. We've witnessed failure upon failure, and yet the 20th century notion of a collective world peace still lingers in the minds of the American foreign policy establishment. It's a notion that believes that somehow U.S. participation and leadership within the United Nations is a foundational pillar of our security and our strength. A glance at the world today, however, reveals the harsh truth. Enduring global peace remains just a dream. While the corridors of the United Nations were designed for diplomacy, it now serves as a place where America's adversaries, people who trample on diplomatic principles and even human dignity itself, to say nothing of national sovereignty, sponsor initiatives that fly in the face of our foundational principles and values. Just last November, we saw Iran, known for its support of terrorist groups and its systemic targeting of Jewish people, chairing a UN human rights event, actually chairing it. Russia and China, nations that challenge our interests and undermine our values at every turn, hold permanent seats on the UN Security Council. China, for its part, also continues to enjoy the benefits of developing nation status, exploiting UN programs and other monetary benefits for questionable gain.
So China enjoys the benefits of developing nations. You know what the irony is? I think he was the one in the last interview that mentioned that they had borrowed about $100 billion from China. So they borrowed from a developing nation and they are financing the cause of the UN and WHO. They are the biggest, contributors to these organizations. So do you see where he's coming from? Now, I'm not saying he's right or he's wrong. I'm just exaggerating his points. I'm just blowing it up so you can see and understand too.
Now, the United States, as the UN's largest funder, ends up tacitly supporting these things through its funding. The largest contributor to the UN's budget is the United States. The Biden administration continues to fund indirectly groups like Hamas through the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, known for its anti-Semitic indoctrination. Similarly, the previous administration halted funding for United Nations Population Fund due to its support for coercive abortion practices in China. The bloated bureaucracy of the UN epitomizes the very foreign entanglements that our founding fathers warned against. The global security environment of today underscores the urgency of reasserting American sovereignty. The Defund Act, which I've introduced this week in the Senate, seeks to end U.S. participation in the United Nations system, ensuring that any future attempts to rejoin would require Senate approval. Now, detractors argue that U.S. involvement is essential for our security and that absence from the UN would somehow diminish our soft power, forcing us to rely solely on military might. These are misleading distractions. The current UN system itself erodes American soft power and compels us to conform our national interest to the whims of the so-called rules-based international order. This fear-mongering overlooks the proven value of bilateral relationships, which are the true bedrock of international diplomacy. At the UN's inception in 1945, President Truman presented a choice between international chaos and the establishment of a world organization for peace. Yet, despite the UN's existence, chaos abounds, adversaries leverage their UN positions, and the goal of peace is overshadowed by the ambition for supranational governance. The true hope for a peaceful world lies not in such global institutions, but in the strength of our national sovereignty and the use of that strength to forge and continue to foster bilateral relationships around the world.
I think a lot of people have been saying this. Let me know if you agree. So a lot of people are saying, instead of America going out to be the world's policeman like some people would target, instead of them going out to do all these things, trying to provide aid for this one, sending security soldiers, weapons to this one, why don't we focus on developing and enhancing ourselves? Because we have some problems right now. Why don't we focus on that right now? And maybe if we have sufficient resources, we can keep doing those things. So he's not the first person saying it. I think Candace Owens, in an interview with Patrick Bet-David, said the same thing or something similar. She might have mentioned that as well. And I think it's a good opinion to have, because you have to give when you are sufficient. If you don't have enough and you're giving, I don't know how that's going to work for you. So he's making a valid point, whether it's true or whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing. I just think the point is something that should be considered.
William Shakespeare said, "What win I if I gain the thing I seek?" One must truly ask, what does the United Nations seek? Is it truly peace? I think not. Its actions speak for themselves. Since 1945, the U.S. has slowly surrendered national sovereignty to the UN under the guise of customary international law, and under this broad aspirational goal of somehow bringing peace and harmony through this international organization. An international organization that is itself utterly untethered from the electoral politics of any country. They very much operate as an island unto themselves once they enter the halls of the UN. Now, we in the United States finance a very significant portion of the UN, much of it voluntarily, with no obligation to do so. Our generosity has been misused to empower terrorists, foment hate, facilitate coercive practices abroad, and in many, many ways undermine our values. The Defund Act aims to restore American independence from the UN's bureaucracy. It will repeal the Foundational Participation Act within the UN Participation Act of 1945, terminate our contributions and participation in peacekeeping operations, and strip UN personnel of diplomatic immunity within the United States. It'll also remove the United States from the World Health Organization and prohibit re-entry into the UN system without the Senate's advice and consent. It's time, Mr. President, that we face reality. The UN has long since ceased to be an effective or responsible steward of our resources. It's time for America to lead through strength and sovereignty, not through subservience to an organization that...
So if America leaves the UN, who stays then? That would be the question. Who's going to stay? Because it seems like America has been in the forefront of the UN and the activities and all those things. I mean, there are other countries and other nations who also take, do a big part, but also a big part of these organizations. But the United States has been always in the forefront. Anyways, let me know what you think about that. I think he's made a valid point. But I kind of doubt the US would leave the UN. Yeah, I really doubt it. Or WHO, as a matter of fact. They won't, because maybe they have some other things that benefit from it. Maybe they do. I don't know. Just saying. Let me know if you think they do have some other benefits from the UN that a common man might not really know. That being said, is the end of this video. Share your thoughts on the generality of the video, everything you want to talk about. Feel free to do so. That being said, why do I keep saying that? Smash the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.